So welcome to the Digital Craft Festival. I'm Flora Pearson and I'm Exhibitions Manager at the Devon Guilds. This is my colleague Phil, who is Education Manager at the Devon Guilds. We've got 5, possibly 6 makers with us. One hasn't turned up yet. And we're doing a show and tell today. So this is something that we do on a regular basis with our members. And we usually hold it in the evening in our cafe, and it involves food, and people bring a lovely piece of work or 2 or 3, and they show their work in the safe space of other makers and talk about techniques, talk about inspirations, talk about their practice. And it's something people find really useful. So we thought we'd try it digitally. So this is our first digital show and tell. So welcome, lovely to have you all. I'm going to ask each maker to talk for 5 minutes about their work, and we can prompt you. And then we're going to open up to the floor for 5 minutes so that your fellow makers can ask questions, and then we'll move on to the next person. So we're going to start with Helen Noakes, who's a jeweller. Over to you, Helen.
Hi there. I'm Helen Noakes and I'm a jeweller. I've been making jewellery now full-time for 20 years this year, so it's a bit of an anniversary for me. I specialise in using resin and miniature scale models. That started many moons ago in class when I was given a project for found objects, and I found these. Well, I was given this box of figures, and my teacher told me to go ahead and make some jewellery and use resin, and she couldn't teach me how to use resin, so that was all completely self-taught. I armed myself with a book and away I went. It's been my signature now for a very long time, and I make things like my swimmer ring, which I'm going to try and show you. She probably has is the longest she has the longevity in my design world. She's been all over the place. She went to New York a few years ago to the Museum of Arts and Design. She was very popular out there. But it is a very comfortable ring to wear, strangely, if a little odd shaped, but that's the kind of thing I do. I've recently done some small kind of limited editions where I have 20 of each item, and the first of those is my Mermaid Necklace, which I adore. I think she's absolutely beautiful, and she's set, I don't know if you can see it, she's set on a Baroque pearl and on a chain which has freshwater pearls and a little stamp tag, which I'm not sure I'll be able to show you, but I'll give it a go, which says, here we go, probably backwards, isn't it? I wish I were a mermaid. But anyway, so that's the kind of thing I do. I've been working really all the way through lockdown. I was in New Zealand visiting my family when they locked down, and I had 10 days there trying to get out of the country, which was interesting because the airport was closed. But I eventually got home, and then I've been straight back into my workshop because I can self-isolate there. So I had all these ambitions of doing my tax return and updating my website and catching up on everything and doing a deep clean, and none of that's happened, but I have made some jewellery, made some pieces like a giant cocktail ring, which is my extraordinary little giraffe. Well, it's not little, it's enormous, but so it takes someone kind of brave in jewellery to wear something like that. But yeah, so that's me. And now I'll probably need a prompt.
That's fine. I'll give you a prompt. I don't know you, but we've stocked your jewellery. I mean, I've never met you, but we've stocked your jewellery in the shop here for quite a long time. So I sort of feel like I do know you. And the jewellery seems to me to be very robust, but also very delicate. And I suppose I've always wondered if you are, in fact, a swimmer.
I love swimming. I love the water. I'm a Kiwi. We were, you know, born to swim, I think, and you know, go bare feet and be in the water all summer. But I don't think that was my very first kind of exploration into the models. I think probably the first ones were the penguins, which are very popular. And regarding the work being delicate but robust, I'm always one. I want my work to last. I don't want it to be something frivolous that is easily broken. So I test it out on me. I'm not gentle with my jewellery. I bash things around, and if it works on me and it lasts, and then that's fine with me. That's kind of why I did the with the swimmer ring, I did the silver surround, because I knew that if there was an exposed edge in the resin, then that would be the thing that would chip and break. So it makes it a lot tougher, but yet gives it that kind of a bit of fineness with it as well, and a bit of added value, I guess, because it's a precious metal. I think the thing with resin being a plastic, it's hard to elevate it to a position where it's a valuable piece of jewellery, but I hope I'm doing that.
You also seem to get, there's almost a story in many of the pieces, which I think is quite a hard thing to impart into anything, and maybe jewellery most of all, though probably jewellers feel differently about that, I guess. But
well, I'm lucky because the characters actually have their own life, and they're all German made and have been made in the same factory since the 1940s. They're beautifully detailed, and they were one of the very first small injection moulding companies, and it's a family business, still runs today. It's really frustrating to try and deal with them. If they break a mould, you lose the figures for years. It's because they don't remake them very often. But anyway, they have such life and such character that I think they've made it very easy for me to make stories with, especially like the little seaside figures where I can have them running along the beach or chasing each other. Or there's one series where a little boy's stolen his sister's bikini top, so he's running with the bikini top and she's running after him. So they always make really lovely little sets of jewellery. And recently I've been with the seaside figures, I've been asking people to send me their beach sand from their favourite beach. So I put that in the scene with them. I've got a little commission for a surfer girl at the moment, which she's going to be on sand from Watergate Bay. So that kind of thing I love doing. They do create their own stories, but I like words. So that's, I think, what I add to it is a little bit of the wordsmithing.
Thank you. Right. Well,
has anyone else got a question for Helen? All right.
Silence. Next.
Lovely. I would like to see some of those images in children's books. I think they'd be amazing.
I think so. I have got the swimmer ring appeared in a jewellery book last year, which has some text with it, and it's a German professor. I haven't got it with me, I should have bought it, but that was quite interesting to see how she interpreted what I was doing and used it within her stories. But yeah, that's a good idea. I think they're beautiful enough, even if it's jewellery. A lot of my necklaces end up being hung on the wall, the bigger pieces anyway. Yeah. Especially, I haven't shown this one. This is the ones where they're swimming through. The swimmers are going right through.
Yeah. Katy, did you ask the question?
Question?
Cool, putting your hand up. I really like this. I do this at home a lot when my boyfriend's not listening to me, and I stand there with my hand up until he listens to me. You said that you had beautiful work, by the way. You said that you had mould made in Germany. Do you design your own moulds to get sent there, or is this
that
they have?
Sorry. It's a whole set of railway models, miniature railway models that have been made since the 40s. So I rely on what they actually do. So, and they're quite hard to get. I think a lot of people have found them. There was an artist called Slinkerchew who used to put them in tiny scenarios, like sat on a cigarette butt or something, and photograph them. And since then, it have gone through the route. People use them for terrariums and all sorts of things. So they are quite difficult to get. Quite interesting characters I can get a Barack Obama and an Angela Merkel. which I've not found a use for it. I think the Queen's there along the way. But they are lovely. It's hilarious looking through the sets of models. Very German in a way, a lot of them. But yeah, I don't need to get the German police or anything like that in my work. I can leave those out. But it's lovely, and it's frustrating at the same time, trying to kind of find the figures that you'd actually want. And I have my kind of stock. I always have the swimmers. I always try and get the mermaids. I have seaside figures, polar bears and penguins are probably the main kind of ones that people like, and the animals, tigers and lions.
So you're very much reliant on another business surviving.
Oh, yeah. So I have a lot of conversations with model train shops, because I can't buy directly from the manufacturer unless I have a model train shop. So I have to use a third party. And their supplies come twice a year. They order twice a year. So I end up scouring eBay and all sorts of trading sites around the world to try and find them. But the fact, the thought of these little figures ending up in a dusty attic on a railway somewhere is actually quite depressing, because they're so beautifully done that they need to be kind of out there, people seeing them. They're so detailed. I started off making a little tiny model, and then someone gave me these, and I thought, there's no way I can compete with the level of intricacy that goes into them. But yes, so that's where they come from. Strange railway sets.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you very much, Helen. We could move on now, because that's more or less it.
I can mute myself. Sorry if you got road noise. I'm right on the road here.
Thank you. So next up is Jayne Watts, another shed production.
On mute. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Jayne Watts, and I'm known as Another Shed Production. I suppose my best pieces of work, or pieces of work that you are probably familiar with, are my belts, and so this is one of them. So I actually forge the buckles from shipwreck metal. So my husband's a diver, and he retrieves the metal from a Second World War American Liberty ship called the James Egan Lane. The metal that he recovers is actually declared to the receiver of wreck, so it's all above board, and we follow the droits, fill in droits, and so we've got the relevant paperwork. So it comes home to me like this. So it's a rod of metal that was just a general purpose rod of wrought iron, and it comes home to me like this, and you can see it's covered in concretion, and I remove the concretion with a big hammer, basically. But I remove the concretion, and it exposes the wrought iron pin in various states of erosion. So they started off kind of the thickness of maybe my thumb, and they go down to a really small diameter. You can probably see. So each buckle that I make is completely different, because each rod that I use is completely different. So it's an amazing thing to be able to put it in the forge, which is rusted. It's just a rust, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen to it. And it comes out with the forge, and I've formed it into the shape that I want to. I don't work it too hard, because the patina that's built up on the metal over the years is the star of the show. And there's one here that's got you can probably see it's got quite a lot of patina there. And that's sort of 75 years of being under the sea. And so it's always an exciting time when I get the wire brush on, because I don't know what's going to pop out. And I don't use any jigs, so every buckle is completely different. So there's a different shaped one there. Kind of the feel of the metal sort of dictates to me the shape of the buckle. And they're all different sizes, so I then cut the leather to fit the buckles. So it's a complete product that I make from start to finish, and it's the leather that I use is from a tannery in Northamptonshire, and I chose that particular tannery because I was actually born in Northamptonshire, so it kind of ties everything in for me. And so yeah, I mean, my work is quite rugged and robust and reflects coastal living, I guess, and it's made like Helen to be used every day. It's not a piece for show, it's functional, but hopefully people like it aesthetically as well. So yeah, so those are my belts. Another influence is I'm an avid paddleboarder, so life for us revolves around sea. If my husband's not under the water, then I'm on top of it, or we're doing something connected to it. So another influence is when I'm out paddleboarding, so I'm constantly looking around for inspiration. And so part of my original belt was sort of like the pirate style stitching, so you can just see that a pirate was probably on a boat somewhere and he needed something to hold his trousers up, so he just kind of stitched a couple of stitches in a belt to hold his drawers up, really. So so that's where the inspiration for that came. And so I moved on then from belts to bags, and so most recently I've made the bag that I've made most recently is the Yelm marker bag, and the influence for that is I was out paddleboarding one day coming back in, and there were marker points on the side of the on the land, and it just guides you in with safe passage. So I incorporated it into some stitching of one of my bags. So again, like Helen, these are the marker points, so you line them up and then that guides you in through the deep channel. So I try to incorporate pieces that I find into my work, but use good quality leather as well. So part of the fixings with that, I try not to use any kind of manufactured fixings if I can help it. I do, but I try not to if I can help it. So the clasp here is a piece of chain link that I found on the seashore. So I just attached that with a hidden magnet in behind. So again, it's functional, but it's got a story behind it. So and then to be practical, and I didn't quite know how I was going to finish the ends off. So on the strap, again, it's fixed with the chain link. So I put a thumb loop in, because we all kind of tend to grab hold of our bags when we're walking along. You don't realise it, but next time you're walking along, you'll realise that actually when you hold onto your bag. So yeah, so I kind of incorporated a thumb loop. So my work has to be functional, and yeah, live up to the test of time, really. And I suppose my pride and joy so far, my greatest achievement in the making is my Shore 24 bag. And so this actually took 24 physical hours to make, and so all of my work is hand stitched. I don't use a machine at all, and I like the idea of the straight stitch as opposed to the diagonal saddle stitch. It's kind of more in keeping with my work. So the buckles are forged again, and the challenge there was to make 2 buckles almost as identical as I could, or at least in size, to match the strap. So yeah, so the metalwork has a link to the shipwreck's website, so you can actually take a virtual tour of the wreck as well, and you find out more information. So so like I say, that the work is functional, but it's actually got a story that you can chase if you want to, and find out more about its provenance, if you like. So I think that's
lovely, Jayne.
I've got one final thing actually that I'd like to say. I'd like to announce that I've actually just been selected as a full member of the Devon Guild of Craftsmen, and I'm absolutely thrilled to bits.
Great. Ah, welcome. Nice.
So yeah, I'm just it's the first time I've actually been able to say it out loud officially. So yeah, absolutely thrilled.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's lovely. Well
Great.
done, Jayne. That's great. Well, Jill, it's
Well, we
lovely
look
to
forward
have
to
you.
seeing the work when we're an open organisation again.
Yes. Has anyone got
you.
any questions for Jayne? Yeah, Katy. Go
Come
on.
on, Katy.
Not a question. I just wanted to give this lady some love. The first time I met Jayne, you had just been offered, I think, an associate member with the Devon Guild, and I want to congratulate you so much. Well done. I think that was, what, 6 or 7 months ago that we met each other.
It was.
Yeah. Well done. Congratulations. Your work is truly unique, and you are such an inspiration to me. As a fellow leather worker, I think you're incredible, and I really look forward to the day that we actually get to go paddleboarding, and may it be soon.
it needs to be soon, doesn't it? And
I miss the sea.
I think at this point it's worth saying that I'm really quite privileged to be part of the leather workers kind of network, because I don't consider myself a pure leather worker as such, but the makers that I've been involved with have just been phenomenal. Really, just, it's been incredible. It's been an incredible journey for me too. So the support that I've received has just been unbelievable. So yeah, it's been great, and I'm really pleased that people like my work. So it's
well done, lady. Really proud of you. Well done. Your buckles are just the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So thank you for being you.
Thank you, Kate.
Got a little question, Jayne. I love your talking about provenance, and obviously every part of your production, you're looking at where things come from, and you know the history behind them, and that's incredible. I think people absolutely love, you know, the idea that you can buy a belt and then you can watch a virtual shipwreck, you know,
Yeah.
where that metal came from is incredible. And I just wondered about the leather, and whether you've ever tried tanning, or whether you would consider it. The provenance of the leather is interesting to me, because I know it really varies in the world.
Yeah. It does, and I choose to use British leather, and the tannery that I use, or the supplier that I use, is an independent supplier. So they were established in 1919, so they go back a long way, and it's an independent little business. But when I first started, so the story attached to this is my friend Tom asked if I could make him a buckle. I was in Perth, Australia, and he asked if I could make him a buckle for his work belt, and I said, leave it with me. So I came home and so I had a piece of old reed bar and forged a buckle, and I thought, oh, okay, so that's the leather, that's the buckle done. So now I need a piece of leather, and lo and behold, Mike, my husband, said, well, I've just found a piece of leather floating down the Erm, and this is just so true. And anyway, so it was a piece of leather that was just, it was trashed really, but I thought, well, you know, nothing to lose, it's free, we can try, you know, I can try and see what happens with it. So anyway, it was so dried up and old that we actually had to saw it to cut it. We couldn't cut it with Stanley knives or anything, so we kind of got a saw, and we sawed this leather, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I fed it with coconut oil to try and soften it up, and then I drilled some holes in it to try and stitch it, so that was my journey. But the leather came from, you know, like I say, floating down the river, and actually a piece of it is still in one of the water tanks softening up, so I don't know if it's ever going to be used, but yeah, so the leather, yeah, is British at the moment. I know, Katy, you use a Devon manufacturer, don't you, or tannery? So it's a little bit different. So yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jayne. I think that's lovely, and welcome to the Devon Guild.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We're going to move on to Jayne Armstrong. Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, congratulations, Jayne, other Jayne. That's brilliant. And thank you so much for that. It's lovely to hear these stories. Really lovely to hear the stories. Anyway, my name is Jayne Armstrong. Hello, everybody. Some people would know me as Jayne Against the Grain, which is my kind of Instagram and website title. And I'm a maker in glass and wood. So two very disparate materials, but I kind of find a way to bring them together through a kind of shared aesthetic, I guess. So I think the thing I'm known for the most is my wood. I do a lot of green turning, primarily oak that I source either from my garden or from a local tree surgeon. And I turn green and very, very thin. And I think that's the thing that is distinctive about my work. Wood turning tends to be quite generically chunky, but so this piece, for example, is very thin. Some of the pieces that I turn are less than 1 mil, so they're actually transparent and you can actually see through them. And this piece I actually turned yesterday. So when it's turned, it was flat. And as it dries, it changes shape. And it, depending on where the heart is in the wood and on really on the temperature and so many other factors, it depends how it will change shape. So that's always the that's the exciting bit, really. You never really know what you're going to get. So this piece here is the bowl. So my pieces are sort of sculptural and functional. This is one of my more functional pieces, but again, it's green turned oak, and you can see it has the most gorgeous markings. And that's what I look for when I start working a piece. How can I exploit and make the most of the beauty of each individual piece of wood? And that's kind of what I'm interested in, really. So the two things are about how do I make the most of the piece of wood that I love, but also how do I make us think differently about wood, about the material that I'm using. So the other thing I do with my wood is I will dye it. So I'll soak it with steel so that it becomes a lovely dark blue. I don't know if you can see the colour here. Can you see that? Not really. Or I dye them black and then wax them as well. So they kind of become, and they're very soft to the touch. So they're really light and they're really soft. So they're quite tactile pieces as well. And they take a variety of forms. And they kind of look like little shells sometimes. They're kind of beautiful. And I love the wood. The other pieces that I think the piece, yeah, I make more sculptural pieces too. I use another piece of wood that I really like using is spalted wood. So spalting is when occurs in wood when fungus attacks it, and it creates all these fantastic lines in the wood. So I like to use that to create kind of more sculptural forms, and again to using whatever pattern is in the wood as a kind of starting point. I'll kind of work from that to create some kind of form or aesthetic. And then quite often I'll bleach them as well to soften it. Beech can be quite yellow. So, and when I bleach it, it kind of brings out the various tones in the wood, which can be really nice. So the second material that I work with is glass. I do a lot of pâté de verre work, and it's glass that I've been working with the longest. So I've been working with glass for 10 years now. And again, I kind of like to challenge what people think about glass and what it can do. So my glass tends to look like ceramic. You can't really see through a lot of my glass. And I use a lot of textures. And one of the things that was most popular for me last year at Bovey Tracy, which was my first show that I'd ever done, so which was really exciting for me, were my little glass dishes that are then painted with silver. Can you see that? I'm not sure. So it has texture, and then I paint them with silver, and they proved to be really, really popular last year. So I guess I make platters. So I do a combination again of kind of sculptural forms and more functional. and try and get the wood and glass in various combinations so it can be used or just something gorgeous to look at. So that's it.
Right. No, okay. Thanks. That was absolutely bang on 5 minutes. Well done.
I think I was a teacher in a previous life, and I think you get used to timings actually. So.
I haven't actually seen your work before, and when I just saw it written down that you worked in wood and glass, somehow I had that you combined the two materials in the pieces, but now I realise that isn't the case. But have you ever done that?
I do occasionally. I have. So at the moment I'm making a piece for a garden. It's like a very tall, quite thin totem pole that's made out of sections of turned wood, and I put glass with that. So, and there's a piece of glass on the top. So that at times I do combine the two, and I'll insert glass into wood occasionally. But generally the piece, I create distinctive pieces, glass or wood.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I can't imagine working in two such different materials. And
I think the thing about working in two such different materials, I can have a glass takes so much, kiln form glass is a quite extended process. There's a lot of processes involved, mold making. If I'm doing a lost wax process, for example, first of all you have to make the wax object and then the mold and so on and so on and so on, and it can take a long time. With wood, there's more of an instant gratification. So if I'm in need of a hit, I can turn something on the lathe in a day or in an afternoon. With glass, you know, so this piece here, which is a glass platter, it's made using glass powders, and then it's cast into a mold, and it took, you know, would have taken, this is like 3 times in the kiln, and then it's been sandblasted and so on and so on. So it's a much more extended process than making the wood. Although I do like process and I like experimentation. So I like taking both materials to different places, really.
has anyone else got a question? No.
Would it be good to have a 10-minute break, or are you happy to carry on?
I've just joined the meeting. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you, Susan. Hello.
Okay. So I was a bit late in trying to get in.
Okay.
No worries. You're here.
What do you feel? Do you want to have a break? We're halfway through. We don't have to, but I
wouldn't mind a comfort break. It'd take me about 2 minutes.
5-minute break, 2 minutes. We'll just keep rolling.
Yeah.
Did I miss any technical know-how, how to click on being on the main screen or anything?
The only thing, Susan, is that when you're listening, could you mute yourself? You know how to do that? To mute yourself. You know, it's at the bottom of the screen on the left, you've got the mute button. So when someone else is speaking, if you mute yourself, then you don't get any peripheral sound coming in, that's all. Does that make sense? There you go. Yeah, that's it. Can't hear you.
Oh look, we've got a four-legged.
Oh, there's a doggy.
Jago.
Who's that?
This is Jago.
There you go. Hello, Jayne.
Susan, you missed the introduction, where we sort of quickly laid out the format, which is that everyone will have 5 minutes to talk about their work, and then there'll be 5 minutes of questioning. 3 people have gone, and you're last on the list, so you'll be the 6th person. Okay.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So you'll have a 5-minute slot to show us something, talk about it, and then we'll ask you questions for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Right.
I'm not in my workshop because it's such a rural setting. There's cockerels,
Right.
soaring downs of trees, cows being collected. So I'm here. So
Good.
okay.
I don't think many workshops make a good background because sometimes they're quite echoey and a bit, I don't know, cold and damp in my case.
Is this
Well, I started off in the forge and set up a little set so it looked, so you could see what it was like in the forge, but it's got a tin roof.
Yeah.
And just as the Zoom was about to start, the heavens opened. And so I had to grab everything and bring it into the workshop. So yeah, it's about being flexible and adaptable, isn't it? So, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So is your workshop freezing in the winter? Does the forge keep it warm for you?
No, it's not heated in the winter. So I come out and I light some candles inside some terracotta pots, or I'll light some night lights the night before just to try and keep the temperature up. The forge is a gas powered forge, so I just switch it on and off as I need. So yeah, I can give you a quick. I'll give you a quick show around because it's hold on, if I flip it around. Okay, so well, here you go, here's my little film set. But so that's the forge itself. It's just a little 3-burner gas forge, but it does the trick for me. And then I've got a door that opens out into the woods, so that's, I can nip over there and collect the hazel for the foraging hooks that I make, and then just turn around and it's just a bit. There we go. That's it. That's me. So.
Dive the metal. I kind of had this picture of you standing on the shore, waiting for him to come in, saying, "What have you got? What have you got?" Or it's not like.
Well, hold on a sec. Well, it's kind of like that. He brings home so much stuff. He calls it treasure. It's debatable whether it is, but yeah. So he comes home in the truck, and the neighbours kind of gather around on a Sunday morning to see what he's to see the stash. But yeah, I've got lots of pieces of metal that I incorporate in my stand. So this is a piece of brass that he bought up, and I just made it into some shelves and things. So it's quite useful having bits of spare metal and things knocking around. You never know what you need to make.
Yeah, everything can be reused, can't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I like the idea of that, actually. Using it for what it's not, its intended purpose is always, it's a great challenge.
Yeah, lovely. So, shall we start again now? Shall we resume? Next up is Rosemary Jacks.
I'm just going to hang on because I think the postman's just parked outside and I think he's going to start up in a minute. So I might just sort of talk for a bit. I'll stop if he...
The guy strimming earlier outside the window.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's all we need.
Trimming. Shall I make a start and see?
Yes. Hello, Rosemary.
Hello, hi, hello. I'm Rosemary Jacks and I'm a potter. I'm based in East Devon. I've been potting probably for about 25 years, and I've always made red earthenware, slipware. I like it. I like working with it. It's really versatile, but I also like the historical nature of it. So I like the fact that you can make bricks and tiles out of it, but you can also make amazing tableware, wassailing jugs, all sorts of really funky pots that suit my taste. I'm probably best known for sgraffito pieces. This is one of my sort of standard pieces. So I'm throwing in a red earthenware with a white slip and then sgraffito over the top of it. I've lost my train of thought now. So recently I've been had an idea for an alphabet jug, which I got one of them here, and I really like my pots to be fun. I want people to sort of pick them up and think, oh, that's really quite funny, and it bring a bit of a smile to people's faces. So I have a lot of fun myself thinking of funny things to put onto these alphabet jugs. So I've got, what have I got on here? I've got G is for gin, of course, and U is for underwear. And it's even got a picture of me on this one. So that's, you know, the sort of thing that makes me smile. And when I first started making them, I put lots of colour on them, but I didn't really like that. So I sort of toned down the colours on that. And it's led me into a new line of making blue and white ceramics. So I've been doing more sort of decorative hand painted pieces. Can you hear the postman? I'll just hang on a minute. Is he about to disappear? Right, I think he's gone. So these are all hand painted in cobalt and just cobalt and water, just painted onto the white slip, and then just with a clear glaze. But it sort of led me down, you know, I really like it, and it's sort of quite a new venture for me. But that's what I've been working on over the last sort of few months, really. You might want to prompt me.
Oh, right. Okay.
Hi, then.
Did you start doing that before or after lockdown? Was it lockdown?
Well,
prompt or?
I sort of made a start before lockdown. I did the alphabet jugs. I started those about a year ago, and it was something I'd had an idea that I wanted to do them. And then since then, I think before Christmas, I sort of made a few pieces with the blue and white. But over lockdown, I really sort of concentrated on that, and I've sort of got together quite a nice selection of it. And I've also started making sort of bigger pieces, like these sort of big platters, which are good, you know, you could have as a wall hanging or roast potatoes even. Yeah. That's
yeah. So which of your pieces sell best?
Probably these trees ones. I
Yeah.
sell huge amounts of sort of that design in particular. I think it sort of sits well. The colour combination is quite good, and they're quite subtle, but they're quite cheerful as well. That one's got a fox on it.
So you make sets of those, I imagine?
I do, yeah. I do a sort of whole range of tableware in that. So, you know, kitchenware, salt pigs and cutlery drainers, teapots. And then I have quite a few people that sort of collect what I make and have, yeah, big selection of my work.
The blue and the white would have been launched at the craft festival, I guess.
Yes, it would have been, yeah. Yeah, so it's a shame, but I shall put, yeah, but I've got quite a nice selection of it together, so I might can promote that now, that I've got a good amount. I'm nervous.
It's okay. You can stop speaking and we can ask you questions.
Okay, that sounds good. I had things to say and I can't think for 1 minute what it was, but yeah.
Anyone got a question?
No one's got a question.
Oh, that's okay. I've got lots.
That's good.
They're quite, I thought at first actually you'd used a tin glaze and they were, you know, in Maiolica really. I didn't, but it's quite interesting to hear it's white slip.
Yeah, it's graffito, yes. Yeah, and then I use oxides and a little bit of underglaze colours and then a clear glaze.
And do you have online marketing channels or?
I've been, lockdown's been quite good that it's sort of pushed me into setting up an Etsy shop. And that, because it's something that I always tend to sort of push to one side. But that's all up and running now. And then I have a website. So that's at rosemaryjackspottery.co.uk.
Good.
Good.
Get that in.
I would have thought your big platters would sell incredibly well.
Yeah, so I had a few of those Christmas and they did go, yeah, they were good. So yeah, it's nice to do. It's nice to have a sort of slightly different angle. So it's still the earthenware, but actually it's sort of a different type of decoration. I quite like the idea of having sort of bands of decoration around the outside, and then just a sort of central form, but still something that's a bit fun. Yeah, so my main influences come sort of natural world. I was brought up on a farm, and I've lived most of my life in rural locations. So that's you know, where I get my inspiration from.
And there's a lot of historical references in your work, I know.
Yes. Yeah. I really enjoy. I've always enjoyed the sort of North Devon wear, and now more recently I've been looking at Delft wear and taking influence from that.
Yeah.
Just like that historical reference.
Yeah. Your alphabet jug reminds me of we had a printmakers show quite recently, and there was a book that someone put in, a hand-printed, limited edition book, and it was called The A to Z of Adult Life.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I think it also had gin for G. Possibly underwear for you. So
yes, yeah, a friend of mine, we were talking about perhaps we could do a very probably not for the show and tell on this, but a very rude version of it. So we had quite a lot of fun thinking up some different definitions for various letters.
I think you should. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
There's definitely a sort of subversive element that's sort of Grayson Perry-esque, you know, making a point through a very traditional medium.
Yeah.
Nice.
And quite subtle, you know, it doesn't have to be right in your face. Sometimes I can put some very tiny lettering on that's, you know, I like people to sort of have a look and then look again and see something different. So that's quite a good thing.
And are you on Instagram as well?
I am on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
So yeah, Rosemary Jacks.
Lovely. Thank you, Rosemary. That was great.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to Katy Warriner, who makes leather. Hi, Katy.
Hello, Katy.
Hello.
Hi, Katy.
My name is Katy Warriner, and I am the sole maker and designer at Warriner Leatherworks. It's always quite nerve-wracking going towards the end. You've got all of these wonderful ideas that you want to talk about, then it gets to your turn, you get the butterflies in your stomach. I started leatherworking when I was a very small little girl, really, having in a former life being a horse rider. We used to fix our own tack, mostly for the fact that we were broke, so we couldn't have anybody else fix it for us. And my mum was a seamstress for many years when she was younger, so I got taught how to use a needle when I was quite young, really, and then that sort of disappeared, and as of, I suppose, the age of about 12 or 15, I said that I really wanted to be a saddler, and I think it was watching lots of films with beautiful horse tack in it. I said that I wanted to make saddles and bridles for the film industry, and then that didn't really happen, and then I had a beautiful pair of boots that lasted me about 12 years, and then they finally gave up the ghost, and that was about 10 years ago, and I've still to this day never found another pair of boots to replace them. So I just had this idea that like I think many of us, I wanted to make something that lasted a lifetime. I have grown up in my mid-30s now. I've known quite a lot of my life to be a very throwaway industry, and I just didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I wanted to create things that lasted a lifetime. So I started pottering a bit more with leather. I did a 2-day leatherworking course about 6 or 7 years ago now, and it then turned into a hobby, which my friends and family benefited from greatly for a long time. And I then decided to turn that very expensive hobby into a business. And about a year ago, I played around with the name of Warriner Leatherworks, and it's continued thereafter. I've got my own collection on the go, but actually over the last few months of lockdown, I've found a lot of very weird and wonderful commissions coming through my door, one of which on my workbench at the moment is a cowboy hat. So I've been doing really strange things that are away from my collection. I had a biker from Plymouth get in touch with me recently, and he wanted to have a bespoke biker jacket made for him, made out of 4mm leather. So a bit like a Harley Davidson jacket, which was incredible to make. So yeah, I've been really interested in doing weird and wonderful commissions recently. And I suppose my main thing that I really enjoy making, similar to Jayne Watts, is my belts. I don't have a boyfriend that dives for wonderful metal under the sea, but my belt buckles come from a family-run foundry in Walsall. And my leather comes from a tannery in South Devon, which uses oak bark. It's the last remaining oak bark tannery in Europe. So I'm really interested in the provenance of my materials. Jayne was talking about provenance earlier, and provenance to me is really important. We have so much of our material, I think this also goes with the throwaway society, there's so much of our material, of whatever that material might be, that comes from all over the world, and quite specifically the Far East. And I really wanted to know that all the materials that I use come from Britain. It was really important that things come from not more than 200 miles from my own doorstep. So my favourite thing at the moment that I make for my own collection is my belts. I call them the unsung heroes of the world. We all have a belt. They do an incredible job holding our trousers up every day, and I don't think any of us come home of an evening and take off our belts and thank them for their hard work and effort. So these are my unsung heroes. And I really enjoy making belts. It's quite simple strap work, but these are the sorts of things that last you a lifetime. And when you make things like this, you can imagine that this will be given to a new person, and hopefully by the time that they reach grandmother or grandfather status, they should be able to hand that down to their children or to their grandkids. And that's hugely important to me. So the provenance part of my leather I find really interesting. The cattle that the tannery use are from beef herds that come from Devon or Cornwall. It's tanned in Devon. I think that the oak bark comes from Wales. So I have, unlike the wool board that you can pretty much trace your fleece or your wool back to the farm, we don't have this with leather, and there's a huge gap in the leather industry that's missing with that at the moment. So although I can create say that my provenance comes from Devon, I still can't take it to a farm. And animal welfare is a huge part of my life as well. So I'm really interested to try and bridge that gap. And so I can actually say that the leather that this belt is from comes from this farm, maybe only a few miles down the road from my own doorstep. You asked a question earlier of tanning. I have tanned my own hides before. I did some courses in deer tanning, which was incredible. And I've possibly got the opportunity to be able to do some cow hides in the future. So hopefully I might be able to really create provenance with where my leather comes from. But I'm just very, very interested to try and create very interested in soil to soil regeneration at the moment as well. I've been very honoured to become part of a group called the Fibre Shed, which is all about provenance again and where our fibre comes from. We used to have such a thriving tannery industry in this country, and over the last few decades, or quite a lot of decades, it's disappeared, and it's not there anymore. So I'd really like to understand the reasons as to why it's not on our own shores anymore. I think that we all know the answer to that question, but I'm a bit bored of saying cheaper materials and economy and global economies. I think that there's a lot of history that goes along with it. So it'd be really interesting to find out the reasons why it's not so much on our doorstep anymore. So it's really nice to say that I get to use this leather. It's really wonderful. It feels very ancient to be using it, and I really enjoy that. I do a lot of repairs as well. Repairs is something incredible to me to work with. It's really lovely to have a piece that was made by someone maybe 50 or 100 years ago, and to have that piece on your table to say that I am fixing it, to be able to let it continue with its life. And also it allows you to put yourself into the mind of that maker. What tools did they have then? What was the setting around their workshop like? And I think that that's an incredible thing, to be able to repair these wonderful things. And some of these are maybe over 100 years old. And that's really wonderful to work with.
You're on mute. Okay. Thank you, Katy. That's amazing. The fibre shed, it sounds like a really interesting organisation.
It is. It was founded in America, actually, originally. So if you have a look at Fibre Shed, spelled the American way, Fiber, it was founded by a really interesting lady called Rebecca Burgess, who I think was doing a textiles degree and was working a lot with wool. And she asked, I believe she asked her lecturers where the wool came from, and nobody gave her an answer. So from that, she realised there was a big gap in the market as to there are so many sheep that were produced for meat in America, and not just produced for meat, but obviously produced for wool as well. And why was it that it wasn't able that she could use wool from a sheep that was grown and bred in America? And from that, also the material to dye said wool, most of it was manufactured materials or chemicals, let's say, that were really bad for the environment. So she started to use plant fibers for dyeing, and then she started up this idea of using materials and textiles and plant fibers and animal fibers that came from with only 150 miles from her doorstep. And from that, the Fibre Shed was born. There's some incredible podcasts about this. If you just jump onto the internet and look up Fibre Shed, you can really jump into an incredible world. And then it's come to this side of the pond. So a very good friend of mine has started up the Southwest England Fibre Shed, and it's starting to be run now all over the country, not just the southwest of the country. And it's mainly crafters, farmers and plant fibre dyers that mainly work with wool. I'm the only leather worker, so I'm very honoured to be a part of it, but leather is still a fibre, skin is still a fibre, and it's really great that I've been part of this community, because it's really opened my eyes to where leather comes from. A lot of our leather gets sent abroad. I'd say probably about 70% of our leather gets sent to the Far East to be tanned, and it's just a bit too far. It's a bit too far to go. And I'd say the same if I was over in the Far East and knew that most of my leather went to this side of the world to be tanned. I'd be saying it's too far to come from that side too. So yeah, it's very interesting to see how this can, with all of our materials, how we can sort of bring it back closer to home.
Katy, will you keep us posted if you're doing anything about the Fibre Shed idea? We'd be really interested just to stay in touch with that, because I think, you know, it's a big theme, isn't it? The, you know, sustainability and the localness of our products is
Yes.
really important to so many makers, and I think so many of you have already talked about that as well. It's something that comes up really regularly, so we'd be really interested just to hear any advances.
I would love to stay in touch. And yes, I think it's really interesting with what Jayne was talking about, and the fact that Jayne's leather comes from Northampton, because that's where Jayne comes from. So there's a lovely story that comes along with that. And also the fact that you know where your metal comes from. So you're repurposing something that's down in the bottom of the ocean. I think people really enjoy a story, and it's not just as a sales tactic. It's being able to keep a craft and a tradition alive, and also to be able to take a craft and an idea further into the world that we now live in, and to take something and turn it into something that's practical with a story behind it as well is so interesting. And also to be able to work with our environment around us. How can we, what's that old cliche line, take only photographs and leave only footprints? And I think as much within the craft world as we can do that, and I think we are educators with the craft that we have. If we can educate the people that are using our wares and buying our wares, then hopefully that can create a little bit of a pyramid effect and be able to educate those people as well, and maybe they might be able to make different choices in the future to live more gently.
Lovely. Has anyone got any questions for Katy? Okay.
Yes.
Jayne.
I felt like my mum then, trying to find the right button. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Brilliant. That was fantastic, Katy. That was awesome. The tools. I love tools, blacksmithing tools, leatherworking tools. They're great, aren't they? And it's what you do with them. They're manufactured. They're made for use. But it's the outcome. It's what you can do with practice with a tool, and it's the same with hands as well, isn't it? And it's leather is a wonderful thing, and I think all natural products are wonderful things to work with, aren't they? So but I would be really interested in doing a collaboration with you with some tanning. That would be really cool. I'd love to do that. I think I might know where I can get some deer hide, so with the venison attached probably, but yeah, that would be a really cool thing to do. I'd like to do some work with you.
So we've got a paddle boarding, venison eating, deer tanning date ahead of us. Jayne, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, maybe we should video it.
Yeah, maybe some tomatoes from your greenhouse too, because mine aren't growing at all, so that'd be great.
But so how, a question maybe to everyone really is how have you all been affected by lockdown? I mean, I've been challenged with some fantastic sort of commissions that has really made me sort of scratch my head, but I've really enjoyed them. So yeah, I guess I'm putting that question out to everyone really. How's lockdown been for everyone?
I'm unmuted, so I'll go for it. Lockdown's been really interesting. I mean, my life is quite locked down anyway. I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm quite antisocial, so actually being locked in my house is quite the norm for me. You talked about commissions. I've actually had more commissions, weird and wonderful commissions, come through my door since lockdown than my own collection. And it's also made me kind of really have to use my brain a lot too. But it's also given me a really great opportunity to delve into the history of leather and really start to focus in on the fibre shed aspect of things. So a quieter life has allowed me to sort of say, right, time to focus down on what's really important to me. And I think the idea of lockdown for materials has opened a lot of questions for a lot of people. The idea of buying local, staying local, using your materials from your doorstep, etc., etc. And for that, I don't want to say thankful for it, but I suppose in a way I am quite thankful for this. I think a lot of people are thankful for it. It's really opened a lot of people's eyes into the global issues that are happening around the world. It's been quite interesting. But yeah, lockdown's been an interesting one. It's been an interesting one. My business, I'm very lucky to say that my business is continued very gently and very softly, but it's continued.
Likewise for me. And the strangest one, well, it's not strange. It was a challenge. Was a pair of braces, leather braces. And yeah, they're fab. I'm really pleased with them. But I didn't realise that I had a pair of braces in me. So there you go. So lockdown's come up with some fantastic things. So
I think we're gonna carry on because we've got Susan still to talk.
Yes.
It would be really nice to maybe come back to that question about lockdown if anyone else would like to answer that question. It's a very interesting topic. If we just hear from Susan and then we'll come back to it, if that's okay with you all. Susan, we're going to pass over to you. Could you unmute yours? Oh, you are unmuted. Sorry.
So, is there something I need to press to get me up on the screen?
No, you're fine. You're
fine. I'm a bit like Katy, really, a little bit nervous as to starting this talk, but to continue the answer about being in lockdown, I'd like to show you a piece of work that after a while, the trauma of being in lockdown, I felt that sitting on the cliff tops and sitting there and meditating and absorbing all of the atmosphere and the calmness of the sea, it calmed things down and everything got a bit more tranquil. And I really wanted to absorb that mood and take it back with me to the workshop. And these two pots are about the two that have just come out of the kiln with the butterwork. And I feel as though these reflect the calmness of everything. So being in shutdown has worked fairly well for me, that, you know, it's been a journey. Because I've been a member of the Devon Guild since 2000. And I left Plymouth College of Art and Design, where I did ceramics and glass. Hey Jayne, I know about Pat de Bear. And my body of work was mostly about raku. So I had these, I'm making these pieces, which a lot of people knew me for about 20 years with raku. So each one of these pieces is burnished with a pebble this size. And because I work from the landscape, this is about the topography of the land. And this is the River Avon that flows, well, through Everton Gifford, where I lived, down to the Bantham. And working with the landscape is very much how I predict into my work. We've had quite a wet winter, so raku's been a bit difficult. So when we moved into this property in 2008 and through 2009, being a very wet to do raku, I started to investigate new clays and new slips, and which is something very different for me. So looking at dry glazes, I'm not a huge glazer. I've come from a place of painting, really. So I felt as though slips and engots would act a bit like, for me, like an oil painting. So I started to produce these engots and clay slips and start painting on my work. So as you can see behind me, so start sort of drawing and sgraffito and painting. And then I found that some of the slips came quite textural and quite thick. So, and then started to investigate the glazing and putting some glazing on just to give me some tonal value. But I really enjoyed that journey from coming from college at 1998, joining the Devon Guild. I became a member of the Craft Potters Association. I got being elected member of the Craft Potters Association. And I've exhibited in various exhibitions at the Devon Guild. Thank you. And welcome, Jayne. So with the new body of work that I was producing in 2009, I had a success of selling it at open studios locally in South Hams here. And with that success, I bought a new kiln. So with the new kiln, I then produced the new body of work you see behind me. And just before lockdown, that body of work went into the Devon Guild, and it's still there in the exhibition, new at the Devon Guild exhibition. There it's sitting. So it's quite a journey for me, really, from the raku to the new work that I have.
And when you unwrapped those pieces, you were really nervous because no one had ever seen that sort of work by you, had they?
Well, this is it. I've been working in the workshop, producing the work, and it's not really been out anywhere or for anybody to see. I've posted it on Instagram and Facebook, and you get likes. Hello, I like. But really, when a piece of work is in the gallery, for me, that's what I enjoy. I've made it, it's travelled from the workshop and it's gone into a gallery. And for someone else to like it and to buy it, oh, that's lovely. That sort of fulfills that making journey for me, really. I really enjoy that. So with lockdown, that's it, really. It's sort of lockdown and the journey's come to the little bit of an end. So in the workshop, on my own journey. So
have you been producing lots of work during lockdown?
yes. Well, this was the last pieces of work. So I do have quite a bit, but I gave myself more time to think about what I was producing, because also on that body of work, I was accepted for Earth and Fire at Nottingham, and that got cancelled. And obviously the Craft Festival, so that's cancelled. And Clay, which is Devon Pop-Ups, so that's been cancelled. I was in the waiting wings for Farnham, and there were a couple of others that I submitted for, but they subsequently been cancelled. So this is my work having a viewing, really, with you.
Yeah. That's a nice way of looking at it. I'm sure most people here today are in a similar situation where you're very overstocked with not many outlets.
Yeah. I do have some gallery inquiries. So after this today, I'm going to make my selection and the work will be going out to galleries.
That's good.
So let's hope, that people make that journey safely to the galleries and go and have a look.
Yeah. Susan, where can we see your work online? You mentioned Instagram.
Yeah, I have my own website, www.susanluca.co.uk. I'm in Handmade in Britain, and also Instagram, Susan Luca Ceramics, and Facebook. I am on Twitter, but I guess that's about chatting.
Can I put a question out to everyone? Have you found Instagram to be useful over lockdown? I mean, if you want to unmute, feel free, because it would be nice to maybe have a bit of a general discussion.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I? I'd like to say something about that, actually, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Jayne.
So I spent the winter making work for 2 shows, Cheltenham and Bovey, that would have been on now. And when we went into lockdown, I was kind of despairing, really, because I had all this work, had spent lots of money to the shows. What am I going to do? So, I set up a website straight away and really started using Instagram. But then the Artist and Makers Support Pledge came up on Instagram. And I was a bit ambivalent about it at first, because it was in early stages of lockdown. I wasn't sure whether it was right to be kind of trying to sell my work. But at the same time, I need to make some money. So I started contributing to the Artist and Makers Support Pledge.
Can you just explain what it is?
Okay, so there's an artist, Matthew Burrows, who is on Instagram. He came up with this idea to create a kind of self-sustaining community. So the way that the pledge works is that when you sell, you use a hashtag, Artist Support Pledge, but also the Crafts Council came in with the Makers Support Pledge. You use those hashtags when you post a piece of your work on Instagram, and people then can message you if they want to buy it, and you can then take up a conversation and show them more images and what have you. And I found that I was, I think it kind of, the way it works is as soon as you have sold £1,000 worth of your work, you then commit to spending £200 on other makers' work. So this is how it becomes then a self-sustaining community. So I started doing this, and I was very lucky to have someone who is quite high up in the Crafts Council quite publicly buy a piece of my work. And then all of a sudden I had 1,000 followers, having only had like 50 followers before. And so I've managed to sell a lot of the work that I've made for the shows just using the pledge, really. And it's just been amazing because it was quite terrifying. But at the same time, you know, it's been great seeing the world slow down. And actually, because I live my life in quite a slow way, so, you know, that's been one of the really positive outcomes of this terrible, strange time that we're in. And I just want to say one more thing about this, really. I think the other thing that's come up is people have been crafting more, and the idea of actually making do and mending has been something that's I've thought about a lot during this period of time. And I've actually made some work, you know, with that idea in mind. And this is something that comes up in times of crisis. So it was there in the war, it came up again in austerity, and now it's come back at this time. So I made, one of the pieces I made was this little piece of wood that I've then embroidered and mended. I've kind of scorched it until it fell apart and then embroidered it together. And I think it's important to kind of remember this period of time and the positive things that are coming out of it and what we can do with that, particularly in relation to our work, and how we can carry some of these really positive messages forward. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Jayne.
Yeah.
Has anyone else got anything to say about either lockdown or Instagram or the Makers Support Pledge or anything else?
I have found Instagram very interesting from the point of view that you're sort of posting yourself out there and getting to grips with the technology. And I'd kind of left Facebook, and because they said, oh, well, no one does Facebook anymore. Anyway, I took a look and I went back to Facebook, and suddenly there was a whole plethora of people out there going, hi, you know, how are you? And I sold several pieces through Facebook. But Instagram is really interesting, is that you do get the contacts from galleries and other people like that. So they are really quite separate, sort of contact and chat with Facebook. But Facebook's interesting, where actually people are warming to you and they want to know more about your work and the background behind it and things like that. And getting to grips with technology in shutdown has got in the way of making. So, but in a way, it becomes quite, you think, well, I'm glad I've done it. I'm glad I've done it, because it's a whole new thing to learn about. I'd rather be out walking and sketching and painting and sitting on the cliff top trying to gain some inspiration. And I have a very vast allotment plot, which had a herd of cows on yesterday, bit of a panic. But yeah, I think the Instagram and Facebook, they're all good tools. They're all good tools.
Yes, Helen.
I think they're great tools, but I also think there's so much noise coming from Instagram and Facebook at the moment that I've actually taken a step back from both of them and am doing far less. I'm finding that I'm still getting commissions through by people phoning, by Facebook, by Instagram, by email. So there's still that small turnover, and I haven't been pushing for it because I thought I would use this time to slow down, because I've had 5 years where I've just kept on and on and on, and I was burning out. So it's been good time and a terrible time for me to slow down and take a step back. But I do find that if I do go into Instagram, I find it so noisy with everyone saying, buy this, look at this piece, look at that I kind of, it turns me off a little bit. So I think that's the other side. I think there's a bit of a balance, and I think you should be walking on the cliffs more and taking in the view and going to your allotment, because, you know, it's a weird time in this world, and we have to take every little bit of good we can out of it.
Yes, Jayne.
Instagram has been a really useful tool for me. I've posted pictures of my work during the lockdown, because some of it has been commissions and I've been really quite pleased with it. But I've not pushed for sales during this time, and I struggled with the makers and the artists pledge with that. We all do need to make a living, but there was the pandemic going on out there, so I chose not to push myself too far. But as a result of that, people actually then came to me and wanted to buy when I posted on Instagram, so they would visit the website, Another Shed Production. And so that was useful. But with Instagram as well, I took lots of pictures of my paddleboarding expeditions back over the years, and it was quite nice to just revisit those, and early morning paddles and sunrises and sunsets and things, and I found that people were actually quite enjoying those as well, because I couldn't go out paddleboarding, nobody could, you know, we were all confined, weren't we? So so it was a useful tool to look back and just sort of embrace nature, I suppose, and the things that we saw, and look forward to positive things too. So I think lockdown has been quite a positive experience. Obviously devastated that Cheltenham and Bovey were postponed and now cancelled for this year, but it's been okay. It's been an okay time.
Yeah, I think it's okay to say that lockdown has been quite a special time, hasn't it, for a lot of people, especially in terms of personal development and in terms of work. Just an opportunity that has been unique for people to be able to look back, like you say, Jayne, be able to learn new stuff, like you say, Susan. I think just, you know, we've all learned so much, and also to think about around you and what's nearby, like you said, Katy. I think we've all had an opportunity to really just take stock and build a strong foundation somehow for whatever happens next. God knows what it will be, but it does feel quite a strong foundation. Rosemary, did you want to say something?
Yes, I was just going to add to Jane's comments about Instagram. I've found that people have been really engaged by some of the content I put up, which has been, you know, local walks and just listening to bird song. And then I've just been adding a few pictures of what I've been up to. People seem to be engaged in the making process, and I've done some short films about what I've been making and techniques. But a gallery that I sell in Axminster has been very supportive, and they did an Insta sale for me. So it wasn't myself pushing my product, which I always find is can be a bit too much, but she did one for me and it worked really well. She's been very, very good. And yeah, it was a really positive thing for her to keep her business going, but also for me. So I was very grateful for that. It's really good. So, but I think lockdown has been, it's been a positive, very positive experience for us. I've found, normally I'm here on my own, but my sons are home because they both had their school. Well, one's now finished school and the other ones, they both had their exams cancelled. So I've found lockdown quite a different time for me. My concentration hasn't been pots, especially at the start of lockdown. But it's been a time for resetting things, I think, and just sort of thinking about where I want to go with it. So it's been good.
Generally a positive response to lockdown,
Yeah.
apart from the trauma of it, really.
Yeah. We're going to start to wrap it up. Someone's dog really needs their attention.
Yeah, it's out here, I think. I'll mute myself.
They're all desperate for a walk. It's been really lovely to have you all here. Thanks so much. And I know it doesn't make up for the fact that there is no craft festival, but this is going to be put towards being part of the digital craft festival, which I think is going to be a really great thing and definitely worth checking out. So thanks all for coming, and we're really grateful, and we hope to see you again sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.